So I grew up chasing cows. I'm not a fan of a cow, except when it's on my plate. So for what you're going to hear me say now, it's a big departure. But I'm tired of mowing grass. So if you see what that looks like, where I've cleaned off that hedgerow that was along the road there, I did that so that I could build the fence. Now I'm going to take the rest of it and go around the rest of the property and get rid of the evil cedar trees. I'll probably keep some of them. They're not that bad. But anyway, guys, trim all this stuff up, get the old fence out of there and get it cleaned up enough that I can run the new fence. And then we've got to buy something that eats grass, because it just takes too much time to brush hog, 20 acres once a month. It's just more than I want to do. So I'd rather have something out here that's utilizing that grass instead of me just mowing it down. And maybe we get a little value added product out of it, like supper. But anyway, we'll walk around and I'll show you some more of what we're wanting to get rid of. If you remember, we used a dead tree to build our hugelkulture mound with. That was probably episode 6 or 7 last year. But the spot that we got it from, we now have more pieces of trees that are falling down, and we still have, more dead trees standing. So I think what I'm going to do, since I don't like trying to cut this stuff with a chainsaw, I've got to get a track hoe out here anyway to dig my pond with. And I think I'm going to just use the arm and reach up real high and just tip them over. Those are easy. I mean, they're dead anyway, so I'm not going to lose anything. But probably the bigger thing that I'm struggling with is like the sumac here. Now, a lot of people would look at the sumac and think, well, why do you care about that anyway? But I really like them. It's good wildlife habitat and food. And I also think my chickens will like it. So even though this stuff is in my way, I don't want to come in here and just obliterate it. So yeah, I'll have to lose some of it to create an area there where I can get in and fence. But I want to leave as much of this as possible, because this is the stuff that I want and it's already here. Didn't have to pay anything for it. It's just doing its own thing. So we'll be careful to try to save as much of this as possible. So when you see your little birds out here like that, that's a good sign. You've got some seeds there for them. If you look up in the olive trees, those autumn olives, those things are great. I don't know what they're eating, but they're finding something there. It's causing them to hang around. I planted these trees probably 10, 12 years ago. And, when you're doing that stuff, you're planting these little bare root seedlings, and it's almost like you think nothing will ever come out of it because they're so diminutive, and it just seems like, man, these things will never survive, but they do. And so planting trees consistently every year is such a great habit to get into. They don't cost much. It doesn't take much time or effort to plant them. And so what if 90% of them die? If you get a few that make it, it improves the ecosystem, the habitat so much that it's all worth it. So these little dudes are great. And what I want to do now is sort of walk through some of the ones that we planted in the contour rows that we made so we could capture the water to try to help the little trees get a better start off the bat. So let's go look at those. So we tried several different methods last year of establishing trees. We were planting these little small bare root seedlings, and they're easy to plant, they're inexpensive, but we want to give them the best chance we can to survive. We always overplant because we know we're going to have mortality, but we actually didn't have as much mortality this time as we've had in the past because of some of the things that we did to try to hold moisture around the trees. My soil here is extremely sandy, so it's not an issue of us ever having to worry about drowning the trees or having root rot. Here it's just a absolute necessity to try to hold on to the water as long as you can and get it to infiltrate around the tree. So we did contour plowing, and then we plowed these furrows in the contour, and that gave a little depression for the tree to be planted in. And as the water runs off the hill, it goes into the little furrows, it pools around the tree, and then it gives it a little something, a little moisture to work with. And so you can see barely. You can see some of the trees. They basically survived. And honestly, if you've got to survive before you can thrive, and I'm just glad they made it through the first year. And we'll see, maybe 2015 will be a better year for them. But one of the things I did learn from this experiment was this property is like a lot of properties. It's not all about moisture. This part of Oklahoma was farmed very extensively, and a lot of the soil is nutrient depleted. And one of the things that I discovered in building the hugelkulture mound is that the very act of turning the soil and putting the sod upside down released a lot of nutrients from the decaying grass, and we saw a huge amount of growth in those trees versus these that didn't have that advantage. So let's take a look at the mound. So if you remember, in one episode we built a berm and we directed the water from the roof to that area so that it would accumulate, and then that was the same spot we also built the hugelkulture mound. So one of the things that happened is I wound up with an extra tree, and I just planted it on the berm that didn't have any logs or anything in it. And this little tree is going to turn out to be a very interesting little control subject for me, because this shows what happens if you just plant a tree in this area. So it's a plum tree, and it's about maybe 2 feet tall. So the same day that I planted this tree, right behind me, we planted the trees on the hugelkulture mound. So let's take a look at those. Same tree, same type, same day, same amount of water, everything's the same, except it's on this mound where we've turned the sod upside down and we've got these logs rotting. And that little bit of difference equals a tree that's twice as large. And all of them did it. All of the trees that we've planted on this mound wound up between 50 and 100% taller than everything else we planted on the property. So I am now a firm believer in these mounds. And to show you evidence of that, I made another one that's about 70 feet long. So we'll go look at it now. So I was so impressed with how the plum trees did on the hugelkulture mound that we put behind the house, I decided to do a large one in the garden. So this one's about 70 feet long, 8 feet wide, and about 4 feet tall. There were a bunch of willow trees that grew up around my pond, and they were sucking all the water out of the pond. So I cut all the willow trees down, and they are now the core of this hugelkulture mound. And it was late whenever I built it, but I did go ahead and I planted a few greens on it, and they came up and did okay. I mean, nothing spectacular, but you know, I'm really learning about the whole gardening thing as I go, but I like it. It's fun. It doesn't seem like a chore anymore, and it's just sort of neat to learn and try and see what happens. So, and I guess that's what I would leave everyone with, is I hope that you don't wind up being afraid to try stuff. You know, get out there and do it. If you mess up, who cares? You know, do it again the next time and do it different and better. It's all part of the education and learning process. So I really want to encourage you to get out and try it, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to research this stuff and read all about it and then go try to do it yourself. It won't all be right, and you shouldn't have that expectation. So try to keep it light and happy and go have fun with it. We wish you the best and just encourage you to get outside and do a little land doctoring. Thank you.